I see no members of the public. We do have a new staff to be introduced this evening.
Did we allocate the normal hour for introduction?
Well, she doesn't have to use all of it.
I told her to limit to less than 3 hours.
Okay. It's a rite of passage to razz the new person, apparently.
All right, well, thank you,
You
President White and managers. My name is Elizabeth Showalter, and I started this Monday as a permitting technician here at the district. I recently graduated from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs with a master's in urban and regional planning. And I just came from an internship in White Bear Lakes Planning Department, where I worked on several stormwater projects, which piqued my interest in surface water management. From there, I also worked on numerous special projects for the surface water management plans. I'm excited to bring my municipal experience to the district. I hope to be helpful in strengthening relationships with cities in the district so we can better coordinate our efforts. I was drawn to the district by the diversity of projects in such a large watershed and an opportunity to learn more about water management. I appreciate the planning type approach to permitting that the district uses, focusing more on proactive input and regulatory guidance when staff are working with applicants. I look forward to learning more about the district's regulatory framework and working with all of you in the future.
Welcome, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
She's drank the Kool-Aid already.
Under information items and correspondence this evening, we have a letter from the mayor and city council of Greenwood regarding the capital improvement plan, capital investment plan they call it, and other issues. And if I skipped ahead there, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Full approval.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. We have approval of the minutes of the August 10th meeting, approval of the check registers, the general checking account, surety account, and 325 Lake Road checking account, and two items, resolution 17050, which is authorization to apply for Conservation Partners Legacy Grant for Arden Park Project, and resolution 17-051, which is authorization to execute a lease agreement for, lease amendment, I'm sorry, for 325 Lake Road. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. President's report. I attended the Hiawatha cleanup last week, and I guess that was nice event and a good opportunity to talk with community organization leaders and members of the public. We had some CAC folks there, and a really nice event. And they got over 1,000 pounds. Am I stealing your thunder, Lars? Over 1,000 pounds of trash collected. So that was terrific. And then one other item is that we have received a memorandum from the Resolutions Committee at MAUD inviting us to submit suggestions, and they have an October, I think it's 20th deadline. So we'll get that back on for discussion going forward.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Manager Becker.
is this an opportune time for a brief report on the LSOHC here?
Totally. Go ahead.
Yesterday at approximately 11 o'clock, the staff, Anna Brown and Eric Feldseth, presented the request for funding from the Outdoor Heritage Fund to the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Commission Council. And I was there, and I want to say you should be proud of your staff for the quality of the presentation and the proposal. We heard members say this is a no-brainer as they listened to the proposal. And afterward, I talked to a number of the lobbyists who didn't know I was associated with the project and said that's the best project they've heard. And staff did a fantastic job. There was only one question, and that had to do with the aeration. And some of the council members thought that aeration was a maintenance step, and they don't fund maintenance. So we have some follow-up to do. And hopefully we can mend ways and get them thinking about the aeration equipment as capital equipment. And we'll foot the bill for running it. So it was a good presentation, and we ought to be proud of Eric and Anna. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Anna, and tell Eric, that was Eric. I missed you twice this evening. The wrong color shirt, maybe. Congratulations. I've asked Manager Miller if he would do the report from the joint committee meeting earlier this evening.
We had a big agenda. We had two different work programs presented, research and monitoring and operations and support services. Both emphasized their alignment with the strategic priorities, which in the research and monitoring is going to be concentrating its efforts on high impact projects in the 6 Mile Creek, Minnehaha Creek, and the Painters Creek, and it's very clear that the programs are totally aligned with our mission and vision, and we look forward to some very good results of research and monitoring, rather than just acquiring information. We help design projects with information together. In the operations support services discussion was complete on various changes we have to make to allocate benefits to each employee to show the complete cost of each employee in each department, rather than being carried as overhead for the department carrying the overhead for all the other employees. And then had a discussion about scheduling the notices and public hearings that are legally required for setting the levy limit, and that will be published tomorrow, I believe. Is that correct? And for initial hearing next Thursday?
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday. So we're on schedule, but we don't have much time to spare. And finally, there was a presentation by Executive Director Lars Berdahl, and that sounds kind of formal, and Manager Loftus on the HR reorganization plan, which was presented and recommended for adoption. That will be brought forward tonight at the regular board meeting.
Thank you. Are there any managers who've attended other events or meetings they'd like to report on? Thank you very much. The upcoming meeting and event schedule is published, but to that we will add the August 30th board meeting. And at the September 14th board meeting, we will also have the public hearing on the levy and budget. And CAC meets on the 13th of September, I think. Item 11.1, Resolution 17-052, Riley Purgatory, Bluff Creek boundary change. And Ms. Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, managers. Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District has conducted an analysis of their boundaries as part of their watershed plan update to bring their legal boundary more in line with their hydrologic boundaries across a few different watersheds, including our own. And so they have conducted the analysis. We've reviewed it at a staff level and also had our district engineer look at it. We did recommend a few small adjustments, which they've made. Otherwise, it again is just for the purposes of aligning with the actual hydrologic boundaries due to subdivisions and changes that have been made over the years that allow us to bring those more closely in line. And so with that, the watershed is requesting a resolution of support for us, for them to submit a petition to Bowser to begin the process, which from there they would publish a notice and then hold a public hearing if requested. And so really Bowser kind of takes care of the process from there. It's just initiated through this petition. So, similar to back in April, I think Anna presented a boundary change for Carver County WMO, and that process is still underway. So once those two are wrapped up, we'll update all the necessary, GIS layers and boundaries and information on the website, all of that to align with these two changes that have taken place. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Motion to approve, Manager Shekel, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Robbins, Manager Miller?
It's kind of a gross comment, but financially, how does it affect us? I know we're supposed to be interested in those.
Sure. Yes, I have looked at that, and overall, in terms of the change to estimated market value, I think it's less than like 0.4%. So, I mean, it is an overall loss, or there's more parcels moving to Riley Purgatory, but it's relatively small.
Manager Shekel?
Kind of following up on that, looking at this, I don't see any of these parcels being linked to any of the big projects we've been working on, and that's what verification of that or not.
Correct, yeah, both planning and permitting staff have reviewed and weren't aware of any big developments underway or any issues that it presented.
Any other questions, Manager Becker?
Yes. Do you know whether the landowners are notified that they're shifting districts?
I don't think they have been to date, but yeah, I'm not sure, I guess, if that's part of Bowser's process. I think it's just more notification to like the cities and watersheds and counties. I don't think it's to the individuals.
And the second question, you may not know the answer to, but I'll ask it anyway. How different are the regulations between the two districts?
I don't know if Lewis is familiar with their regulations, probably more so than I am. Maybe let you speak to that.
Mr. Smith?
Madam President, Manager Becker, we also serve as counsel for the Riley Purgatory Blunt Creek Watershed District. The rules are not identical, but they pursue similar approaches to stormwater management in terms of volume control and promoting retention on site as a preference. They have, I would say in general, their rules are as protective as the District of Water Resources.
Thank you.
Anything else? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 17-053, approval of the 445 Brown Road Agreement. Ms. Clark?
Manager White, managers, the agreement before you today is essentially an agreement to authorize the district to apply for grant funds to Hennepin County for an environmental site assessment phase 2 work on private property where the district has some natural resource restoration interests. In exchange for applying for that grant, as part of this agreement, the district gets an option for an easement for those natural resource restoration initiatives if we so choose. The item was before the board, presented in draft on April 17th. This is located in the Long Lake subwatershed. To orientate you, the Long Lake subwatershed is kind of two major drainage areas. The northern half drains to Long Lake, which is impaired, and then south of Long Lake Creek drains to Tanager Bay of Lake Minnetonka, which is also impaired. The district, as outlined in your packet, has done a couple of feasibility studies identifying a suite of projects in the Long Lake subwatershed, in addition to previous investments that the district has made. The subject site tonight is one of those projects in the Long Lake Creek subwatershed north of Long Lake on Brown Road. This is the location of the parcel. The opportunity at this site for natural resource restoration is restoration of Long Lake Creek, which you can see crosses this site north to south. This project was deprioritized due to environmental liabilities here and the opportunity to move forward another site for the Long Lake Sewage Lagoon restoration based on the timing of Met Council investment and grants at that site. For this site, the landowner has approached us and asked for the opportunity to partner to achieve his goals of site development. He's looking at 2 single-family home lots on this site. And the district's interest again is creek restoration, potentially remeander approximated by that red line from the feasibility study, or just restoration of the creek itself. This site was a dump site from about 1950 to 1970. There was a phase 1 done here. It was identified as primarily household waste and demo material. For residential development, the landowner is required to do a phase 2 site assessment. And then also for watershed district development of our natural resources plans, a phase 2 would also be required. In addition, that staff feels it's somewhat important for the district to understand the environmental concerns here better with this opportunity. Again, the district is eligible to apply for these Hennepin County grants for a phase 2 site assessment. The landowner is not eligible. The agreement, again, would have the district applying for the grant and then have the option to receive an easement if we so choose after review of that environmental site assessment, which a recommendation would then come before the board. Since this was before the board, the landowner has evaluated his site development and repositioning of his property, and has asked for the area shown with that second yellow line east, which is a little over 2 acres, to be potentially excluded from our easement. And so the agreement has been modified, and it's redlined in your packet, to exclude that portion of his site if at the time we elect to execute the easement, it has been sold or has a contract for sale on that piece of property. And so here's what that revision looks like. It's the western 1.7 acres. And the conveyance area description, I would thank Manager White's careful eye on catching an error in that, and that correct description is shown. The easement has been revised in 1 paragraph. The easement area is primarily used by the landowner for food plots for deer. How they plant those, I have observed, hasn't to be really much land disturbing activity, but we expressly allow these food plots with this revision and just require that the site remains in a stable condition and is outside a 50-foot buffer from a delineated wetland. So the requested action tonight is just to approve the agreement, and with that you're providing general concurrence with the language in the easement. Staff, the landowner has until, or staff and the landowner together through this agreement have till 2018 to make a decision on whether to execute the easement. And that should provide sufficient enough time to complete that phase 2 assessment and review those results.
Thank you. Is there a motion to get this before us?
So
Manager Robbins, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Shackleton. Are there questions for Ms. Clark? Manager Shackleton.
Is there communication as to where the dump used to be, the uplands, in the wetlands?
From approximately from a line line starting about right here and east.
Did they ditch the creek to match up, you think? More or less?
Long Lake Creek has been ditched. I don't know that the ditching and the dump are associated, but you can see in the banks of Long Lake Creek through here that there's waste in
Sure.
the banks.
Okay.
Does it go beyond their lines?
The dump site, yes, I think this fill area is part of the dump.
But does it go south or north of the?
So the fill area starts here and goes east.
Okay.
Does it spill over onto properties north and south, the dump area?
Oh, I don't know that for sure. I think because of the, because this is still all wetland and it's not filled, I think a lot of this dump is within this parcel boundary because this area is still wetland.
Mr. Miller?
What land are they going to provide the easement on?
The easement is the line west of this yellow line, which may exclude this portion, which he has shown as an outlot on his preliminary plat, which he is negotiating lot line adjustment to sell it to this neighbor.
Okay, so the middle section between the yellow lines is what they're talking about providing. Is that only 1.6 acres?
No, the easement area is about 2.5 acres of upland and 4 acres of wetlands, so 6.5 acres
Okay.
total, and then it would be minus the 1.7 acres if that. So it's 6.5 total, and this 1.7 may not be included if it's been sold or has a contract for sale.
So, and there's enough room in that easement they're going to be granting that we can do the creek work and.
Yes, so the boundary line starts about at the base of the upland. So there would be room, and the district doesn't really have a high priority for completing a project here right now. I think based on the redevelopment plans of the landowner, there's a current creek crossing with a culvert that is a restriction. If the landowner redevelopment plans go through, that might be a time where the district considers how to improve capacity and natural resource restoration through that site.
Manager Olson?
Can you show where the animal spots would be?
Within this area of upland.
Okay. They don't know what they're going to plant.
Well, he currently on this side of the creek and back there plants soybeans and corn and pumpkins, I think.
Okay.
You can see it on Google Earth.
Thank you. Are there other questions from Ms. Clark? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Resolution 17-054, authorization to execute a contract for Laketown Ninth Wetland Restoration Management. Ms. Brown.
Apologize, there aren't enough USB drives for us all to be plugged in. Thank you, President White and managers. I have to apologize. I did just issue a red line version of the RBA. I received a call from legal this afternoon, and they wanted me to make some minor revisions to the resolution language there in front of you. So I am seeking authorization to execute a contract with Lennar for wetland restoration management on the Lake Town 9th restoration site. This is a temporary one-year contract before this site is rolled into our project maintenance and land management program. I wanted to just put a map up in front of you to sort of reorient you to the site here. The site that we're talking about is within the 6-mile Halstead Basin watershed in the city of Victoria. And I'll just point it out over here. We're looking at this wetland site right here. Which was identified in the 2007 comprehensive plan as a priority for a restoration site. Many of the managers will recall that in August of 2015, the district board approved an agreement with Lennar outlining a partnership to restore this wetland site, as well as establish regulatory buffer areas as part of regulatory compliance for their development on an adjacent site. Under that agreement framework, Lennar was responsible for developing their replacement plan and doing the wetland establishment work, which included the installation of an outlet control structure. And then the district was responsible for acquiring land rights in order to perform this restoration. And then once the establishment work was complete, we would be taking over all maintenance, management, and reporting through the establishment period. So Lennar contracted with Stantec in 2017 to perform the wetland establishment work. So they've been working on site through this year, and we've been out on the site several times over the last few weeks, and so far it's performing extremely well. Native plants are coming in really well, even in areas that were formerly dominated by reed canary grass. The establishment work is complete in many of the areas, but due to weather conditions and just some of the moisture out there, they'd like to wait until the fall to sort of perform their final round of establishment work, which will include seeding and mowing. However, because they've put a lot of work in the ground already, there's a need to sort of start the maintenance and management work now. So I've worked with Wenk and with Laura Damiancic to review the proposed maintenance and management plan. It's sort of the minimum of what we would need to do to sort of preserve the investment for this year. Before we roll it into a 3 to 5 year maintenance contract beginning in 2018. So the resolution again is for that short-term management work, and we'd be bringing a contract back before you. We are proposing to continue to work with Stantec through the calendar year. They'll be out here doing work, and they've done a really exceptional job through the establishment period. So this will just sort of tack on to some of the work that they're doing out there while they round out their contract with Lennar. So I can take any questions.
Could I have a motion first to get this before us? Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Shackleton. Manager Miller.
Yellow, what is that designated?
Just north of that wetland there.
Mm-hmm.
That was another wetland that was examined for restoration work. So we did, following that 2007 plan, we did feasibility on both sites. And I think, so we have a feasibility study on that site, but it wasn't ever advanced to a project phase.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11.4, HR structure and plan, Mr. Erdahl.
Thank you, President White and managers. This is a follow-up of a agenda item that was on both the committee schedule this evening that we discussed earlier, and also on the board agenda for action. Just to kind of follow up on the previous discussion, this is the culmination of an overly extended period of time when we've, upon completing the strategic plan for the organization, which was approved as the strategic priorities in February, we wanted to make sure that our human resources and aligned well with those strategic initiatives. So again, looking at kind of the overall goals and priorities that are implemented through a recommendation for the proposed organizational structure for the organization, is to primarily look at how our human resources are allocated in combination to support our success with our strategic priorities, to look at opportunities to integrate work functions, and make sure that the functions that work together are working closely together and along the same alignment for strategic priorities, and look for efficiencies and effectiveness throughout the organization. In the packet, there is a memo that describes some of the recent activities that have taken place in the past month or so. Manager Loftus was tasked with bringing this to a quick culmination here this evening, and she's done a lot of extra work to make sure that happens, both in a committee meeting that she chaired, and then also in some follow-up meetings, and a lot of her own personal time to make sure this came together in a real timely manner. So the current organizational chart that the organization has been operating on in the last few years was examined and considered to look for opportunities to improve efficiencies. At its June meeting, the board recommended investigating the opportunity to fold the research and monitoring department within the planning and projects department. And that was one of the kind of guiding ideas or principles that led the discussion going forward. And through further deliberation, this chart was developed to again convey the focus on our priority strategies that are guiding, primarily looking at the opportunities to have change in the landscape and impact policies for land use and water planning as a combined effort. And so there are some new positions that are created to add and streamline some opportunities and some reallocation of some current positions. In the previous meeting, in the committee meeting, we did talk about the potential to add a solid or a dotted line from different places, and I think that the direction was to add the final direction was to add a dotted line from the communications and education department to the district administrator, and then to have those areas, otherwise with a solid line, have the reporting structure underneath a newly created assistant administrator position, and also planning and projects director. Some of the ideas that were conveyed in terms of a summary of activities as a key somewhat to the organizational structure changes were provided also. And we talked in the committee meeting just prior to this meeting about these being a guiding document to lead efforts to put together the implementation process. There's still quite a bit of work to do in terms of this directional document. It's kind of looking at kind of the long-term goal, but we want to make some of these changes on the short term. So there's some things that will happen very quickly, and kind of depending on other areas, we might want to be a little bit more careful or deliberate with other things. But the changes will happen in a timely manner to meet expectations of the board and of staff also in terms of clarifying roles and responsibilities. And so in terms of the next steps, we will kind of advance the action of the board this evening, and bring that back to you on a regular basis with updates. It was discussed also at the committee just prior to this that some of those updates could come to an operations and planning committee or operations and program committee for updates, and we'll make sure that we keep managers informed in any way that you would like. And that's the presentation.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion at this point?
I move approval of the proposed organizational chart and the inclusion of the summary of changes and impacts.
May I ask if your motion includes the dotted line from communications to district administrator?
I'm not going to oppose that,
Okay.
but that can be amended.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it
Manager
and
Shackleton?
make the amendment, and offer the amendment to do a dotted line between communications education director to the district administrator.
Is there a second? Discussion on the motion to amend? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion as amended, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say, Manager Shackleton.
I'd like to add a timeline to this, so that it's not just out there. And we have to, we have until December to pass the budget. We have until the middle of next month to do an initial levy vote. I guess I'd like to ask the board how should we approach that? I mean, I think it is possible to get a sense of scale in the next couple of weeks, and I think we should be able to refine something in the next couple of months. And when I think of those timescales, middle of September and December seem like a reasonable time frame to kind of implement this, especially given how many months we've talked about these issues. I've got to believe that we can act expeditiously.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Madam President, I just want to clarify one point because I think I caught some of the discussion in the committee meeting that was ambiguous. You must adopt a budget and a levy by September 15th. And so you are free to continue to amend or revise or update your budget so long as it's consistent with the bottom line and the revenue and the levy decisions you make. You are free also to go through an informational process into the fall such that you might revise your levy and consequently amend your budget downward. And you need to do that by late December. But I just wanted to make it sure that it was clear to everyone that you need to adopt the budget as well as the levy by September 15th.
Yes.
When you say the budget, that's not line item budget, it's total budget, right?
Madam President, Manager Miller, typically when the board acts to adopt its budget, it's adopting a bottom line total figure and referencing an exhibit that's attached that supports that figure. There's an understanding as you go through the year that you may make amendments to that document as you do so, but you're not altering the fundamental bottom line.
Okay. Then we're not, we wouldn't be increasing the bottom line, but we could be, there's nothing that would prohibit us from modifying the internal budgets. And so I would think that we'd want to have this completed by the end of the year. I don't see, this has been going on a long time, and I think we have all the information we need to move ahead. So I amend the motion to put a time frame of December 31st for implementation.
How does that dovetail with what you just described?
When do we have to certify?
Yes.
Or what's the deadline in December by which we might amend?
Madam President, typically the county auditors in the last week of December, in my experience, we've cut it close, and I'd recommend kind of by mid-December being clear. And typically you're required to hold an informational meeting in November to see if anyone wants to still comment on your budget and levy. And so by then you're probably making decisions. And again, that's a a bottom line decision about your budget. And if you decide that making personnel decisions or allocating within departments, that you're making adjustments, you're free to do that throughout the year. All of that is consistent with a deadline that you might pick for whatever reasons, December 31st. It's just that if you wanted to make a downward revision in your levy based on these decisions, I'd recommend you do that by December 15th.
It looks like I'm slowly working through our website, but according to my personal calendar, it looked like December 14th was our workshop day. And we don't have anything on the calendar on that in December. Yeah, by the first.
For it to be in place by January. We have to be done by the 14th.
And at that same meeting, if we chose to amend the levy downward, it would have to be at that meeting also. I don't think we're meeting on the 21st, but I don't remember for sure.
I have it on here that we meet on the 14th and the 28th. And I don't know.
No, that's just the standard second and fourth Thursday.
Okay.
We changed it. I don't know what the change is. So we've got an amendment, a motion to amend here, hanging out here.
I'll second that motion to amend.
But you had said the end of the year. Could you revise that to be
14th.
by the 14th?
14th, fine. Of December?
Yes.
Okay.
And you want to second that? I have a question, though.
I have to.
Go ahead.
What happened to the September date that you talked about? Do we have to go online?
That's the preliminary. Yeah,
Go
yes.
online with the auditor?
Yes.
We have to certify the levy by the 15th of September.
That doesn't affect the HR plan.
Now, I wonder about the practicality of saying, if that whole list that we had up there, next steps, can we actually rewrite all those job descriptions or get them rewritten by December? Can we make all the decisions? I don't know. Do you have some thoughts, Mr. Erdahl?
In discussions with staff and with some managers also, I think that we talked about if there's any kind of reallocation of staff time and resources or change in employment classification, we need to kind of go through some procedure. But I think that some of the changes can happen pretty quickly. I don't think that these are drastic things, and I think staff are quite motivated to make some of this implementation happen in the short term. If we need to do any assessment in terms of some kind of classification studies for certain positions, or kind of making sure our compensation is correct, based on the market, I think that those will be few positions, not a lot. So I think that should be quite manageable too.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the motion to amend? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we have on the table a twice amended motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 11.5, Resolution 17-055, the reaffirmation of the formal performance appraisal process for all employees. Mr. Erdahl.
And I don't have a formal presentation for this. The resolution is in your packets. This is to standardize and formalize a process that for senior level employees has been too informal in the last couple of years, and just to make sure that we comply with a full the procedures as described in the employee handbook for all employees.
Is there a motion to pass this resolution?
So
Manager Olson, second by Manager Shackleton.
Second.
Any discussion? Or Manager Becker, sorry. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And you're still up. It's the
I'm still
administrative
here.
report time.
Just a few quick updates on one is that Manager White already mentioned the event. There's that what didn't steal my thunder for the cleanup event because it was also announced in the splash that went out today. So there's a nice turnout, and then up next event for our series of events celebrating our 50th anniversary year is a prairie seed collection event on Saturday the 23rd of September. Also, there's some communication recently about the governor's water quality town hall meetings. There have been 3 of those to date. They've been in Rochester, Mankato, and Marshall. And just in terms of if you're interested, the ones that are in the Twin Cities area, there's one in Minneapolis on September 26th and one in Burnsville on October 4th. And I know that watershed districts in general are trying to make sure that they are participating in this process so that they're part of that conversation. And then lastly, we've talked a lot about our comprehensive plan process and all the work that our staff have put into that and that all of you have done in terms of reviewing that document. It's already September, the end of next week, and the public comment period is closing on September 5th for this first stage. So we're bringing that. You'll have some kind of summary as a follow-up to when that period closes too.
Thank you. Manager Olson.
Lars, can we get a update on the events that happened tonight that we couldn't attend, which was the 6 Mile Prairie Restoration Tour, as well as the movie in the park?
I'm not sure what those are going on right now. So Darren is leading, I believe, the event in 6 Mile Creek. I'm not sure if I haven't had a FaceTime opportunity to kind of connect with them.
No, I don't mean tonight.
No.
Those people tell us how
Yeah, definitely. I think the movie in the park, I know they've done that at Cottrell Park some other times, and I think those are quite well attended and well received.
It won't be well attended tonight because there is a huge
storm
piece of machinery. It looks like it's for fracking.
For the
gas
lines.
To get under the creek. I don't think the park is even accessible. I drove by there. It is? Off of Lake Street, okay. Because you can't get there from Lake Road. I've got a question.
Yes.
The board asked for you to examine the land trust, possibility of assigning the enforcement of our easement rights on Big Island to the land trust, and you were going to follow up on it.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten information back from them in terms of kind of what the requirements would be for kind of a contractual arrangement to do that. I'm in touch with them and trying to kind of figure out the specifics of that. There are some issues, as many of you have been contacted by citizens and that are looking out for this property as we're looking out for the property too. So that different people have suggested that as to second the motion of kind of the board in that direction in terms of providing a little bit of insulation in terms of our efforts going forward. So I will hope to bring something back to you as soon as possible, but I don't have that right now. So that is being pursued.
Any other questions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.